My dearest brothers and sisters, this is Tunia speaking. I love you so very much. This message will most likely be uploaded somewhere around Christmas. So happy Christmas and happy holidays. Hakann will do the first message in 2025. So in advance, let me wish you a very good new year. I hope and expect that in 2025, things will finally turn around for the better, including on the physical and practical levels. New Earth may not yet fully unfold in 2025, but things will likely significantly improve during 2025. For today, I want to share something that I hope may be able to help you let go of blocks and barriers so you can embody love to a deeper degree. In past messages, we have noted that people often don't see reality. Instead, they see labels. So, for example, a person may see someone who is on the other political side not as another person, but instead they may see them as a Democrat or as a Republican. In that way, they no longer see an individual. Instead, they see someone who is lazy, or someone who is dumb, or someone who is racist, even though they don't actually know the other person. After all, the other person is a Democrat or Republican, and Democrats or Republicans are lazy or dumb or racist. Now, I don't want to say that you should never label anyone. After all, your mind is a labeling machine. And if I tell you that you should never label anyone, and you accept that statement, then what will likely happen is that you will continue labeling people subconsciously, while telling yourself that you're objective and that you never label people. And then your shadow and your amount of unconsciousness will grow. So instead, I will say that you should be conscious about labeling people. Observe yourself, and if you find yourself labeling people and reacting to those labels, then just observe that you're doing so, and try to be as fair as possible in your words and actions. And today, I will also note that you should also be conscious about your self-labels, namely, about the labels that you have put on yourself. I'm not saying that you shouldn't apply self-labels, but I am saying that you should be conscious about self-labels. To an extent, self-labels are useful. If you earn a living as a programmer, then it's not that bad to label yourself as a programmer, or preferably to label yourself as a person who makes a living via programming. You are more than your job after all. If you care very much about spirituality, then it may be fine to label yourself as a person interested in spirituality. That said, I would be slightly careful with labeling yourself as a spiritual person, because that can make it sound like everything you do is automatically the spiritually optimal thing to do, because you are a spiritual person. That is the same pattern that you see when people label themselves as democratic, and then they want to ban, for example, a political party or political candidate, and they see nothing wrong with that because they have labeled themselves as democratic. So they're protecting democracy by banning a political party or politician, and in their mind, that makes sense because they have self-labeled as a democratic person or as a defender of democracy. Or a person might label themselves as a scientific person, and they might want to ban an expert or a scientist from speaking, and they see nothing wrong with that because they have labeled themselves as a scientist. So they're defending science by violating the scientific method. So in that way, positive self-labels can be a bit dangerous because they can be used to justify behavior that otherwise clearly seems bad. On the other hand, negative self-labels can make you depressed or can really hold you back from trying things and taking risks and pursuing what you want. A quality of many Americans, for example, is that they often don't have "I can't" as a self-label. You can really hold yourself back if you label yourself as some kind of victim. Even if you genuinely are a victim in some way, it's useful to be able to see multiple perspectives. Perhaps one perspective is that you are a victim, and perhaps another perspective is that you still have some genuine qualities or skills. You may still be able to build at least an okay life for yourself, even if you were dealt a bad hand. That doesn't automatically mean that your life is destined to be miserable. Plus, perhaps you genuinely are a person in one way, but perhaps you also have some amazing talent. Or perhaps you have a great parents. Or perhaps you were born with a high IQ. Or perhaps you have good friends. Not everyone has that. And sometimes people even think they're being held back by something that they aren't in fact being held back by. For example, there are women who think their life is harder overall because they're a woman. And there are men who think their life is harder overall because they're a man. So, probably at least, some people are excessively focusing on the negatives of their situation and are insufficiently looking at the positives. The grass isn't actually greener on the other side. It only seems that way if you don't appreciate your own grass. Also, different people may go through the same thing and stick wildly different labels on themselves as a result. This means that the labels that you have stuck on yourself may not be the objectively correct ones. And, in fact, your self-labels might be quite subjective. So, for example, imagine that 5 people have the exact same, very painful childhood. One sees themselves as a victim. One sees themselves as irreparably broken. One sees themselves as a survivor, as a strong person. One sees themselves as having gained important perspective and lessons from their suffering. And one sees themselves as a wounded healer, as someone who can help others because of the suffering they themselves endured. One experience 5 different labels that people can put on themselves, which means that certain self-labels that people have may be a lot more subjective than they realize. The words, "I am," are powerful, so be conscious about how you use those words. So what labels have you stuck on yourself? I invite you to take a minute to reflect on that. What kind of person are you? Again, start out by just observing. Observe first. Don't immediately judge or tear down your labels. Next up, how do you view your time here on Earth? Is Earth a prison? Is being there pretty okay, despite all the painful and hard things? Is being on Earth just genuinely fun and rewarding, or do you not enjoy it, but you are willing to be of service? Or do you not enjoy it at present, but are convinced that if you keep working at it one day, your life will become enjoyable? If you want to share in the comment section, perhaps anonymously, please feel free to do so. I love hearing what people think. Regardless of how you label yourself, I think you are amazing, and I love you so very much. You are fully worthy of being embraced as you are right now, and I wish you an amazing Christmas and, indeed, a great 2025. Your star sister, Tunia.